organization, and I'm connecting the dot between women-led tech to VCs that are focused in diversity when it comes to investment, to ensure that more money from VCs are flowing to women-led tech, and we create events and summits and everything along the line for meetups and opportunity for courses to really connect between these two audiences. I'm also a featured author in a new book that just launched about 2 months ago called Product Marketing Wisdom, in which I bring my knowledge from 15 years in the industry as VP Product Marketing, as a co-founder and head of sales and head of product. I've touched all of them in different startups. To really shape the story about how to build a go-to-market end-to-end in different markets, from Middle East to what we have done in Europe and what I'm doing right now in North America. So I think this is kind of like high level of what I'm doing and my background.
No, awesome. What are some of the biggest challenges you face while trying to scale your business?
My personal business, or the companies I'm working with?
It could be a combination. So just the challenges you see, maybe that's kind of average across everything. Or do your own business. Start with your own business first.
So I think for my own business, I will say that there is many businesses in go-to-market. I think there are a lot of promises and solutions, specifically in tech SaaS. I think that it's not easy to build a business that is just consulting based. So one of the things I've learned that you need to think about the next evolution of your business to build some level of product or SaaS solution or something that you can also sell, and not be solely focused on dependent on the consultancy business. One of my great conversations with my peers in Europe was that through doing consultation, this is seasonal. You have some kind of you build your pipeline and then it goes up and down in waves. And you really need to think about diversification of your income. So for me, it's doing a lot of different stuff, building relationship, building myself in different market, and creating the opportunities from this relationship to bring new lead and new opportunities. I'm trying, from my perspective, to build long-term relationship and not just one-off project. So to really work with company early and then go with their lifetime and work with them closely through the years. Challenges are a lot. The economy changes in the past few years are really complex. Companies have less money to focus on generally consultancy. They have less money to put on marketing. I think that the cost acquisition that are so high to acquire new clients are everywhere. One of the things that I learned in the past 10 years is that retention plays are a big opportunity, specifically in the current market. I think that many companies I'm working with are not doubling down on that. And when I think about it, I think about end-to-end play games. What do I mean? Better understand who are clients that are the most relevant and have the best lifetime value potential to grow with you. Secondary, to really understand where can you grow the best, like what are the growth trends in your specific industries and segments, what are the biggest potential for your company. People are going a lot of spray and pray in my mind, working with multiple segments, multiple audiences, and find themselves not focused enough, which bring a lot of cost, putting in a lot of people and resources that are not well played. And in my mind, when you focus enough to know where's your biggest income coming from, where's the biggest growth, what are the potential for your existing client base, we see millions of dollars coming from just expansion play versus acquisition play. So this is stuff that I see in the day-to-day a lot. Obviously, trends like AI that coming into the market create a lot of noise, create a lot of, for my clients, they want to know how to leverage the tool in the best way, specifically the marketing departments. A lot of time I see attempts that are, I would say, foundational. And I think that the understanding about how to take these tools internally to optimize systems, to create better flows, to connect the dots in the company, to create a better data sources that speak to each other. This is a big challenge that a lot of my clients see these days as well.
Right. It's, automation. It's been one of the common things that I've been hearing across businesses. How do we leverage AI to get the most out of it? And I think a lot of people are realizing it's not really artificial intelligence. It's just advanced programming that helps provide you with input to do whatever you need to do, because you still need to prompt. You can't be like, hey, AI, go fix that. And it's like, okay, there you go. I just looked into it. It's like you got to give it information. You don't give it the right information, you get different responses. And it's a transitional period. It's what I feel is what I see going on. People go of all of it, right? Like us adopting it, us understanding what we're adopting, it becoming more efficient, until it gets to the point within a period of years where it will be at that, where it will be able to
I
do
agree. And
those things.
it's really interesting in what you're saying because if you think about 8 years ago, it was the same with digital transformation. Everybody wants to be on this kind of wave of digital transformation and
Hmm.
come into the cloud and have a better digital assets, speaking the same
Disruption. Wasn't that the
right?
buzzword? Disruption.
Disruption
Everybody's
was
talking
the
about
time.
disruption back then. Yeah.
Now everybody is AI. But in
Yeah.
the end of the day, when you simplify that, I think that people want to understand how can I scale my day-to-day
Yeah.
processes, right? My
Hmm.
day-to-day task and make them efficient, scalable, easier to create. And it's not that easy because even if you think about the AI tools that are out there today, they are updating on a weekly basis. They are changing so much. Sometimes I'm asking myself, among 10,000 tools that there is out there, and I'm using, let's say, 10 out of
Hmm.
them, what are the best for this week? Who is the most advanced for this specific
This
task from
week. Yeah.
research and stuff. And this is changing so much. How do you create
Yeah.
the best prompts that connect the right ones and take the leverage of the what you need in your specific company? And I think that most company doesn't know how to do it today.
They don't. I don't know. They don't. That's one of the things that everybody's trying to figure it out across industry for the most part. Although marketing does seem to be ahead from what I've found as far as being able to use and adopt the tools because they're always trying to figure out different ways to be more efficient and optimal. Even for us, like the stuff that we're doing, I would even consider it really call it AI. It's just that the output that it generates is something that is just better than what it's ever been.
100% agree. And I think that this is interesting. If you think about like stuff like Claude and ChatGPT,
Hmm.
so you can take much more data in and create better writing. But what you can't do, in my mind, is any creative work, right? It's not going to create you the best messaging and positioning. It's not going to find the edge of the brand or telling the story. So it can aggregate the data. It can help amazingly with doing the research. But in the end, I think that the uniqueness or differentiator will come from what you do with that. And what I'm worried about, and this is what I see across the industry, is when you give it in the hand of younger or mid-level management a lot of
Hmm.
time, they will just take the output as is,
Well, they don't have
right?
the experience, background, and knowledge to understand what the end goal is trying to achieve because, C-level may be telling them to do something. Then they go, oh, yeah, that sounds good. But they didn't do the research to get to that point. They were just provided with essentially the end output. Um, that's true. But I do think they're going to get to the point where it can do that because one of the things that people seem to possibly miss is that these back end tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they're being plugged into the back of other tools, and other tools are creating these event prompts. For example, one of the tools that we use a lot is called ZimWriter. So with
Yeah,
that, we the API feeds into this thing, and then the way that they wrote the code for that tool then provides the output that's much more advanced. So then we take that and we put it into another tool, like for instance, we would do Grammarly. It does a spell check, and then we do a grader, right? This grading tool, Page Optimizer Pro or some, and then it'll give us like, hey, here's what your score is, and you go for general content to publish on the web. It's like it's really dialed in now versus where years ago it was like, oh, I had to go through, we'd have to rewrite everything, you had to change
I
specific
agree.
things. It's like,
It cut the time in it about 80%. But I think that the point will be, it will be two from what we're saying. It's going to be how to leverage the right tools and connect them together to create the best prompt and the best output, and how not to use the output as is and be critic enough to go
mhm,
deeper and to see the misses, the places that ChatGPT and friends inventing ideas that are not there. I find myself a lot of time coming back and say, did your answer was factual based? Did you use all the resources I gave you? And did you use other resources that is not what I brought in? It's really interesting, like giving you a use case.
mhm,
I'm working with a lot of company to build go-to-market strategy. And when I'm doing it, I'm starting with the basic report. Competitive environment, where do you located, like on this graph, what is your advantage, differentiators, understanding the growth and CAGR in your market and stuff like that. So I built it scalable. But at some point, I tried to do the Google LLM, right? I have the notebook. So
mhm,
everybody speak about notebook and what it does. It remember your history and it's one place to put all your resources. So I put them all in and it gave me the answer for what I asked him, but it was very blurry. So I
mhm,
cleaned it up and started like one by one. And I found that when I'm asking specific inquiries about one document, working much better than asking about the total time. So they can restore it, but cannot generalize it in the right way or connecting the dots. While Perplexity cannot remember all your history, but when you have a one-off project to give them 10, different documents, they do a better job
mhm,
with themes and cleaning the
mhm.
data. And as we said, it's changed every week. So for me, it's really being able to understand what works the best. How do I scale it up and do it again and again? But again, when it comes to the output, when I need to give my creative brief, my perception about potential And my specific knowledge about partnership, I'll give you just example
Hmm.
about partnership potential, places and barriers in the market that you cannot do and how to go around that. This is something that it never come from me in a good research. So you really need to embrace in your experience to ensure that you give extra value for
Hmm.
clients.
Yeah, and that's the differentiator I think between where we're at and a lot of these new businesses or people coming up is they're not going to have the eye or the ability and that intuition of years of experience to like, hey,
But
this
we're
you see
growing
that
there,
right
huh?
there? What's that?
But the tool are growing there at some
They'll
point.
get
They
there,
will.
but and it's gonna be our fault because we're gonna get them there because we're gonna be want to work more efficient.
True.
And then next thing you know, like, all right, what's next? All right, cool. Next question. Can you share a time when you tried a strategy that completely failed and the lessons you took from it?
Strategy that failed and lesson. I have a lot, I guess. Let me think about the one that failed miserably.
Yeah. Yeah, I've started asking about failing because we all have success, right? Like everyone hears a story about how someone's on top, and it's like these are all the things they did great. Okay, great, but what didn't work that I could potentially leverage as well as a business that, or look at differently depending on what my industry and niche is.
Sure. Let's speak about fintech. So I was working as the head of product marketing, VP of product marketing in a fintech company called Spot On. When we started, we used to be a very small company, about a few tens of employees, and we raised about 900 million in 2 years. Really crazy if you think about these numbers.
That's
Andreessen
big.
led most of our rounds, and Lightspeed joined later. And what we wanted to do is to, one, scale up very quickly. It was a good days of fintech, a lot of money on the table, and we wanted to scale up quickly. So one, we started with financial solution and everything about payment processing. Then we leveraged SaaS products, and very quickly we created a lot of SaaS products for in the fintech world.
Hmm.
But we were hungry and we want to scale quick. So we did a few stuff. Like smart companies, we purchased companies because we understood our limitation with evolving and creating and developing all the product by ourselves. I think that the way we purchased companies were very quick, not always in the right due diligence or the depth that need to really get a decision about the long-term M&A and how it's going to look like. So after being very great in what we do in SMB for fintech solution and mid-market, we purchased an enterprise company. It seems very promising on the document. Very strong client from Disney to huge other clients, even airports. And we said we already have the technology. We're going to do the APIs. We're going to clean some overlaps and create the best product for the enterprise market. But the due diligence was late.
Hmm.
And when we did it, we didn't know some of the red flags about client that wasn't happy with the current situation and was in high risk to leave. We didn't know some of the issues in the product itself and some of the feature that didn't work so well in scale. Because when you come to enterprise, you need to think about scale.
Yeah.
And when we started the M&A, other than other red flags, when I can think about it, like when you look in the past, it wasn't a good integration between the two companies. It wasn't well planned how we're going to aggregate the product, the people, the solution. Very quickly, we needed to let some people go, obviously, because of this overlap. The product wasn't in the place we hoped it to be for the planning. And in the end of the day, a company that purchased, I think it was like about half million, like half billion, were sold later to other company in about 100. So it was a lot of like losses of time, resources, focus, wrong client, wrong fit. Sometimes when you want to scale up in the market and go up market, I would say you need to ask much more questions. You need to be very aware and fair with what you have and the capabilities. And what we teach us in the hardest and very painful way was to scale down to where the proficiency is, where the best capabilities are. And it was very successful, but the time that you miss in this market and the cost of like making this type of mistake was huge for us.
Got it. Due diligence, knowing your strengths, weaknesses to apply what what's going on to it. Makes sense.
Understand your market, understand how to scale up, when to scale up, and in the end of the day, to go much deeper about the fit of the products, even
Hmm.
if it seems established.
I find that constant across a lot of problems that businesses have. They didn't fully go in depth or not have an understanding, right? Like if you don't have the right people in place to help you make those decisions and vet things, and you're either gonna get lucky or you're gonna have some problems. And some people get lucky. I'm like, I want
Yeah,
to
and
get
I think
lucky.
that we didn't listen because we
And,
did work with a great consultancy firm.
uh-huh.
And sometimes you want to get a decision from your intuition or past experiences, which is not reasonable to do. But in this case, I think all the red flags were out there and we did not listen.
Mm, yeah, well, you're running 100 miles an hour and you're like, I think it looks good. There's promise. Let's go. Let's keep going.
And you know, but the funny stuff is that when you have such a smart entrepreneurs, and they were like the people that created the company, that ran the company was very smart people and very experienced. They did sell another company in an exit in 1 billion a few years before in the same industry. So it's not that they lack the experience and or the right people around them.
Hmm.
I think that sometimes when you run fast and you have this hunger, which I love, you pay some level of prices, but this
Yeah.
was just very pricey one.
Awesome. Um, what marketing or growth strategies have you tried that haven't worked, and what do you do different now?
You want it about specific use case generally?
Or it could be about your business. Like let's focus on your business and scaling of your consultancy.
So to be honest, it's quite new, so I didn't try a lot.
Hmm.
What works for me amazing is referrals because I
Yeah.
built a personal brand in my industry for product marketing for many years. I was a speaker in many places. I'm working as an influencer, as a partner, advisory board, both for StageOne, Clue. I work with other companies as well. So they send me early reports and I'm sharing my knowledge and expertise. I think that building my own brand for many years helped me just to get referrals and have the right opportunities. The second was to do a lot of stuff without revenue planning, which is weird to say.
Hmm.
For me, working for Femigrants, which is non-profit, and working with StageOne as an advisor, put me in a situation that I have exposure to huge marketplace, both for VCs and entrepreneurs. Usually, when we meet for the first time, I'm not charging. I'm just sharing knowledge, learning the companies, coming to give the value, connecting them with potential investments. And this brings me a lot of lead just by having this connection and
Yeah.
building this type of relationship in Silicon Valley. And I also have it in Europe. I think that for me, it was interesting because working in Middle East, Europe, and then the US opened a lot of market and opportunities across the
Hmm.
board when it comes to stuff that I'm doing. So I'm doing the classic marketing and focus on acquisition and stuff like that. But for me, what I'm trying to do right now is to scale the PLG model and to see how do I sell some of my solution that I bring to companies as a report, as a recommendation document about how to build their pitch deck, how to think about their go-to-market strategy in more of like a product opportunity. So my next scale is going to take it to a product. I'm starting with the courses that I'm building online and
Hmm.
then selling it as a solution recorded. And after that, seeing if I can create all the prompts I have together and I'm building these days to create a product that can work for you and give you the answer by subscription model.
Got it. Okay. And then so let's go strategy. So what are you currently doing to build your sales pipeline and generate leads outside of referrals?
So to be honest, this is my main one. The other one will be content. So I'm now
Hmm.
building a education about what am I doing, creating my courses online and building this in multiple platforms. I know the referral sounds like one off, but for me, it became a huge strategy. I'm part of about 10 communities in Silicon Valley, all for founders and VCs. And I'm bringing my courses to top front. I'm speaking in Stanford events, speaking in industry events, with my VC to meet a lot of these founders. So I have weekly meetings and weekly opportunities of exposure. This is my way. I
Oh,
know it's
that's
not a
great.
conventional, but it works quite well.
Well, what you're doing it is actually is business development.
I
Essentially, what you're doing,
guess
you're just
so.
doing it in how you're doing it. You're structuring and saying and positioning it as how you're doing it's a little different, but it's still the basic construct of going out, building relationships, and establishing that communication chain, so that way you can have further conversations that open up
Agree.
opportunities for
What
you. Yeah.
I don't do paid, like as a perception right now. It might
Hmm.
change in the future. I've done a lot of paid, but my focus in creating the brand, the credibility, the content, the relationship, the opportunity to be in front of the right audience and to give in some level of my free advices and to be in the right spots. to build long-term relationship
Hmm.
because in a funny way, I'm not looking for tons of clients. I want my 4 or 5 for every time period to run with them for the long term. Currently, I have a few, and it's amazing to really see a business starting early stage and
Yeah.
then building with them for the long term. Well, as I said earlier, on the other side, working with public companies as well, which are extremely established, and then I'm coming to do some portion of the go-to-market strategy and to see the growth in specific areas and KPIs, which is awesome. So it's quite a range.
Yeah, yeah, the plug and play for established, so then you're the partner for the new or up and coming business in a
Yeah, and
sense.
it's beautiful because obviously, while you cannot play for a company like public company to a early stage, you can learn a lot about our experiences and mistakes. So you can come smarter and say, we saw in like 10 companies, XYZ move that worked like that, didn't work like that. Here is our aggregation of data and taking the specification of each one of the company's markets and come to play even with a smaller play, but thinking long term. So I love to combine both, like, the late stage and early
Mhm.
stage.
Awesome. And then what advice would you have for businesses who are in the process of scaling at an earlier stage versus at an established stage? Who, you're a solopreneur or you got a couple VAs going on. It's like, okay, how do I get to the next step? And then now you're kind of a small to medium sized business. And you're like, I got a small team and now I'm trying to push out.
So it will be a few stuff. I think that the sweet spot is somewhere, and I say it in a rough way, between round A to round C. This is the most interesting time for companies. One, from my experience, they need to really think about how to get mature. And internally, I'm thinking about the company itself, to have the right employees. When you start something, you take great people, but a lot of times they're not experienced enough. There are people that touch everything, very generalist, and you need it for the early stage. As you go down the road, you need people with the right expertise to narrow down and to be extremely focused and great in what they're doing. Then thinking about silos. The companies is growing, everybody's doing their own stuff. How do you take down the silos and ensure that you have more alignment and org readiness across the different departments? How the communication works well? How do you ensure that data that's coming from the sales team is coming to the customer success, create less friction and more seamless experiences? When you think about the next step of the company, where to go, what are the right market? Do not skip on the research. And it sounds so obvious, right? Don't skip on that. What is the client base you have today? What are the places you can really grow in the best way because you have the experience in them, you have the best knowledge, and you have the use cases to show them your expertise. A lot of time we bring different clients, different segments, and then we fail in these places because we don't know how to deliver. It's not like
Mm.
just expanding right. Go to do your research. Where's the market going? What is the market sizing? What are the opportunities in growing in specific industries? And not always the biggest growing one is the right for you. So just matching between the client base grow to the market size and opportunity. And in my mind, focus and prioritize. What are the 2, 3 segments, not more than that? What are the few products that are the baseline or the flag product? And what are the attach rates? Because in the end of the day, in our specific market and cost for acquisition, focus on expansion, focus on building the market based on your client base and growing from there is a huge strategy to build, I would say, foundational financial strengths. I think that a lot of time we run with R&D, we run to the new market, to the cost acquisition, and then we don't think about the future. So having a strong base and scaling slow, although everybody wants to scale very quickly, step by step, A/B testing, checking, learning it, quick iteration, and running to the next one. Very strong roadmap, clarity at least 12 months ahead. It's not mentioning that we're not going to make changes, but I think that a lot of companies running and changing so much. So it's very hard to see, planning for the long term.
Mhm.
Listen to clients will be huge here. When you start, we're all in love with our product and features, right? We want to do stuff that we believe that are going to solve bigger problem. We need really to speak with the clients, really to understand the market deeply and very often to ensure that we're on the right track, that we're not missing what the most important client wants, and we're ensuring that we're aligning in the trends and the client specific needs and using this data to really get decision, not just like guts feeling. So I think that my number one, which I need to take a line from that, is what works as a gut feeling in early phases should now be more data driven and more structured for maturity.
You say speak to customers. Now, do you do that? One, you can get on a call, start taking calls if you got a sales team and calls coming in as an owner, but which I've always suggested to owners like, hey, you need to get on, you need to listen to some of the calls of what are coming in for complaints and happy customers. And two, um, sending out surveys to try and figure out through customer satisfaction, like what do they like or what do they dislike about particular features or services being provided? Like how do you go
I have
about
a full
finding
playbook
that?
for that. I
Okay.
would say in different stages in the life cycle of a company, you have different needs.
Yeah.
So with product market fit, I will come very early to speak with interesting or like early stage early adopters to understand what they need before I even go very deep with the product, just to
Hmm.
ensure they're building the right thing. When you have established product, when you launch a new feature, a new product, a new solution, speaking with existing client to understand what is missing, what do they like to see next, give them the opportunity to see a demo, to give you a feedback to learn from that. Another stage, win-loss analysis. When the company is more established, I'm working with the sales team to build a full win-loss program. Understand why do we win in deals? Why do we lose deals? What are the main elements or the main drivers to drive these clients? Is the messaging right? What do they don't like? Is it the pricing point? Is it something that we need to change in the product
They always
solution?
mark price.
The win-loss is
It's
big.
always too expensive.
Yeah.
Any of the
Oh,
surveys
yeah,
you said,
yeah.
it's too
But
expensive, lower
this
the
is
price.
easy for sellers. What do the sellers say? It's always about the pricing. But then you learn, no, it's because they had a bad experience with the sellers or because the product doesn't do what they exactly want. And later down the road, in every product that I launch, about like 30 days after launch, getting the feedback and knowing, the experiences and better understanding that. Obviously, NPS, understanding general satisfaction. And later down the funnel, I also do churn analysis. People that left us,
Mhm.
why did they leave? Would they come back? What did they look when they go to competitors? You learn so much from that for your later down the road retention plan. So it's a full play to understand product market fit, product, win and loss, retention, churn, and thinking about full funnel. And I'm bringing them every 3 weeks. This is how
Mm.
deep it is to
Wow,
ensure that we have this knowledge.
that playbook sounds very valuable. And yeah, I think everybody would want to see that playbook because that's pretty cool to have that outlined step by step. And the frequency you're doing is very high. Um,
I know, and most companies don't do that. I think that product marketing, to be a very
mhm,
successful product marketing team, you need to bring this kind of like voice of customer very strongly. The data that come out of that and come off the other data you haven't, I would aggregate that in the best way. And this is the way that, from my experience, product marketing team get a seat at the table of like C-levels and ensuring that you're really involved. And if I need to connect all the dots, I think that the importance for everyone, no matter where they are in the company, is to better understand what the CEO or the GM care from. What are
mhm.
the KPIs that are measured as a company, not just in their roles, and ensuring to connect the dots and to really support what the company is trying to achieve. Too often, it's not happening that way. People think very narrow about the roles and not seeing the
Hmm.
big picture.
But I find that in general, because a lot of people come up through the system only focused on their particular role. So when they get to a higher level, they don't necessarily have they haven't had the experience to understand, like, look, I need to look at the broader picture.
Yes. And as the company scale, if you keep having this small role, I think that it's a huge miss to the company. We talked
Mhm.
about org readiness and connecting the dots. In my mind, is like also ensuring that the communication go down in the right way. What are you trying to achieve this year? The three top KPIs or the three top things, and then ensuring that the teams you're building have the right OKRs or framework,
Mhm.
whatever you call it, to ensure that they 90% of their time focus on the right project that bring to the bigger picture. Because if you come in and cut with the noise and the side project and shadow project, very often you're not meeting your targets.
That and I've done that. I've come into companies where I remember this audio company one time went in and okay, hey, everybody tell me what you did this past week. And I was like, none of this is going towards the target because I had this program of like, okay, here's
Is it
what we're
because
trying to hit in a year. And then I would scale or I break down to what needed to be done each week to hit that year. And I let them just do what they normally did for a week. And at the end of the week, I was like, you guys spent 5% of your time working on the end goal. You're working on all these little busy projects that aren't going to get anywhere. So then I was able to come in and show, wherever we're sending these requests, like, hey, these got to go into a queue. We'll get to them, but these aren't high priority for what the end need is.
exactly that? And so often, like people cut in the tactical over the strategy. And this is an
Mhm.
interesting conversation because I've been leading a panel for vanity metrics versus advanced metric with
Oh,
Slack.
vanity metrics are fun.
Right. I did it with Slack and with my friends in Salesforce about a few months ago. We had a leadership summit here, and we led this conversation about how much we're running to the vanity metrics that nobody cares. It doesn't move the needle, but we celebrate ourselves, right?
Page
And
views.
So much. And one of the CMO came there, Jim was his name. He came from Salesforce. He was one of the creators of Einstein. And he said, guys, one of the learning I had from Salesforce is the tactic is more important than strategy. And we all look at
Hmm.
him like it's not conventional to say, but he said from Banoff and his perception, he preferred to see strategy go in play for a while, but then he wants really quickly to see what am I going to do every day to meet this strategy. And it's more
Hmm.
important to him to see more tactics run to meet the strategy than over developing the strategy because he wants quick turns. For me, it
I
was
get what he's saying.
eye-opening
Yeah.
and interesting
Was
because
he
we
a
started.
micromanager?
I don't think so. I
No.
think it was really interesting to see because
Huh.
it seems like, right? But he see tons of traction when doing that. He was actually going to the stage in some of their events of Salesforce, coming and speaking about product he created in his own labs, and he's just launching with himself. You wouldn't think about
Hmm.
like public company doing something like that. You think about crazy company doing that
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
startups. And then you learn that some of this stuff might be used if adopted in the right way and in the right
Yeah.
percentage, right? When it's kind of like explanatory. So for me, it was an interesting learning this year that I'm very focused on the strategy side. And yes, I need to give more focus to the executional, but ensuring that the executional align to the bigger goals.
Hmm. Got it. Awesome. And one more question. And then we can wrap it up so you can get going. And then, what tools are you using for AI right now?
Cons. Um, so for win-loss, working with Clue, and now we have a Gold Pen AI, which is a new tool to take all the conversation and data coming
Hmm.
in and to have a quick interviews and get the aggregation data, which is huge because in the past it used to be very costly. It was a service and you couldn't really get a lot of the interviews every quarter. It was about 10, 20%. So now you can scale up. On when it comes to do deep research, Perplexity and Notebook LM, and I'm
Hmm.
combining them. As I said, it changes every
Yeah.
week. So my prompts are changing and I'm connecting them. I use ChatGPT for very general stuff, Claude for great writing and deep understanding about how to interpret the data and bring it to Perplexity to create good content. About 70% of that can be used, 30% will be need to change.
Hmm.
What else am I using on a day-to-day basis? There's so many of them, honestly. Um, when I work for a few years in the martech industry, we just launched Revenue Max, which is a combination of marketing tech tool, AI-based, all of them, SEO for PPC, for content creation, for landing pages, for even for scoring leads.
Hmm.
So it was our day-to-day was based on these tools and everything we have done to really ensure that we have predictability for where the money goes and how is the ROI look for our clients campaign was huge. So use that on a regular basis. I think those are like my go-to. I'm trying to think. Oh, obviously, like recording tools, Otter, that I really like,
Yeah.
and it's giving me the great scripts, taking the theme out of that, and helping me to summarize everything I do and every conversation I have. Um, those are the quick ones that I think about
Yeah.
like day to day. I do a lot of other stuff from like design and using Midjourney for some of my artistic stuff, but it's
Have
out
you
of the
seen
process.
ideogram
No,
for,
I haven't. But
so
this is
ideogram,
for
it's
the dance.
for a Midjourney replacement. I stopped using Midjourney and I went to this because it wasn't, a lot of the stuff it's producing with people isn't funny looking. Like it doesn't have like 10 fingers on one hand sometimes, or like
Oh my
is
gosh.
off a little bit, you know? So that's when I can show you that has been working really well. But thank you. I'll wrap this up and I appreciate it. And it was a great interview. Thank you for the feedback.